let's remember then that we've been talking about world population because of its impact environmentally on the planet. I think that in general we can say that the world cannot go on producing an increase in population forever, and that we anticipate that either we do it through education, through health, we decrease the world population or start to decrease it, or it happens naturally through massive starvation or some other catastrophe. At any rate, so far it's looking good. Let's talk now more about the impact that these large populations are having on the environment. And from this graph, we can measure impact by considering three factors. The first factor is population, the second is affluence, and the third is technology. I think to some extent these should be intuitively obvious. We've talked now in detail about how population can have an impact, and that world population is increasing. Eventually, we anticipate sometime this century, hopefully, that it will begin to decrease. Affluence is a very important part of this equation. We know that affluent countries use up resources much more rapidly and in much higher quantities than the developing nations. So affluence has an effect on the impact of human beings to the environment. And finally, technology has both good and bad. We technologically now are seeing many advances that help to feed this increasing world population. So in that sense, technology has been good. It's been a good impact. But we're also seeing where technology uses up vital resources. You create the latest, greatest smartphone. Everybody wants it. They're going to potentially throw out their old phones and buy new ones. And so you can see then that that's using up energy potentially in a way that doesn't make the best of our resources. So all three of these things have an important impact, and I'd like to begin getting into some of the impacts of trying to support our world population. The impacts that we'll start with, the impact that we'll start with is agriculture, and the problems with agriculture that have been faced with ever increasing world population. This is a graph of the worldwide net crop production, and as I've extrapolated it now to 2016, and as you can see very clearly that we have had an increase in crop production since at least the 1950s. Now, what does this mean? Well, first of all, that's good, because with the world population that we have, there is no way that we could support that world population unless we were increasing in our production. Now, maybe you're familiar, Malthus in the 1800s wrote a seminal work that even Darwin influenced Darwin drastically in evolution. And basically Malthus said that it appeared that animals tend to outproduce the food supply in plants. And so one would tend to go up geometrically while the other trend would go up arithmetically. And we certainly have seen an astronomical rise in the population over the past couple of centuries, century and a half. And the concern was, could we produce food rapidly enough? Well, the good news is not only have we produced food increases, but we've produced them on a curve upward, comparable to, not a straight line, but a geometric curve. So So I want to emphasize that without that kind of production, we would be in trouble today. Fortunately, we are able to create a population growth, or excuse me, a crop growth that can feed the population of the world. So that's the first good thing that's the first thing about agriculture that I want to point out, is that big ag, and I hear big agriculture referred to in a lot of bad ways, but without big ag, we couldn't never have fed the increase in population that we have had. But what are some of the problems with big agriculture? Well, one of the big problems is the removal of organic matter. Soil has only so much organic matter. It's taken up when we do farming, and as a consequence then we see that the soils become depleted in organic material. And you know, no matter how you look at agriculture, an increase in world population and therefore an increase in agriculture means that we're going to have to destroy more and more of pristine forest in order to grow. You see in this picture a farm. Farms are typical cases where they go in, they cut the trees down, and then they start farming, and that has a tremendous impact on wildlife, obviously. We're destroying their habitats, we're destroying wildlife habitats, and the more we do it, the more we destroy. So the bigger the world population gets, the more habitats we have to destroy. Well, I hope you see the cycle here. And so we're losing species on the planet, which is a concern. There are lots of estimations out there that we may even be in a sixth mass extinction. We've already talked about the 5 mass extinctions. We may be in a 6th mass extinction because of the rapid decrease of species on the planet due to destruction of natural habitats. It's unknown where we stand in that case right now. Well, another problem of agriculture, as I just mentioned, is not only the destruction of wildlife habitats, but it's also the destroying of the species that live in those habitats. And that's something you can't bring back, and I can't emphasize that more. Once you destroy a species, it looks like it may be dead forever, although there are some experiments going on now to bring back extinct species through genetics. But that's complicated, and we really never will get back probably to the original type of species. There are some zoos that are preserving genetic material, sperm and eggs, so that we potentially someday might bring back some of these creatures that have gone extinct or are going extinct. But this remains, a dubious thing at best. Well, large energy inputs are required when you have agriculture, and we tend to forget about the energy subsidy needed to produce food. You know, if you lived in a hunter-gatherer society, you would have used 1 calorie to produce 1 calorie of food in a hunter-gatherer society. In our society today, we use, it's estimated 10 calories to produce 1 calorie. And of course, when you use that amount of energy up to produce food, now where does that energy go? Well, it goes into the burning of it uses fossil fuels, and the results of that energy being released, of course, one of them is carbon dioxide. So we're having a negative impact on global warming. So this may have given rise to the vegan movement. I'm not suggesting that everyone become vegans, but certainly people that are vegans have seen this negative impact on the environment that eating meat and the products of meat cause. I'll give you an example. it's much more energy efficient to produce crops than it is to produce meat. Don't forget that we have animals that need to eat those crops and support the meat. So again, I'm not trying to say we all become vegans. I'm certainly not. But I think that sensitivity towards this is important. We use, it seems like, a lot of energy to produce 1 calorie food. And where's that energy going? Well, think about it. You've got to generate fertilizers, pesticides. You've got to use farm equipment, which requires gas. You've got to ship that material across the country and sometimes throughout the world, and in order to get the food to the people that are going to eat it. And that takes a lot of energy, and that's a major problem. There has been, in the past years, there has been a move towards small farm, away from big agriculture. And I think in general, small farms, they do indeed use less energy. They try not to use pesticides. So you have this organic growing, and they're in general, I think, better for us and the environment than big agriculture. The problem is that when you have a world population the way that we have, it's impossible to support that world population with small agriculture. And in fact, it could be detrimental if everybody started their own farm, unless of course it was in their backyard or something. I heard a talk a while back where somebody suggested we should all plant gardens in our front yard or backyard and supply. It's a good idea. A lot of us don't have time raising kids and doing our work, but if you can do it, I think it is a good idea. It's healthier for us. It causes a lot less it takes a lot less energy to produce crops, and so it's a lot more environmentally friendly. Again, the problem is that we've got 7.4 billion people expected to increase to at least 9 or 10 billion people by the end of the century. So we just can't, in my opinion, afford the luxury of small-scale farming. Well, I think we can in the United States, but in other places in the world, we've got to rely on big agriculture. Well, erosion of soil is a big concern. A lot of people don't know this, but soil, even though it seems like, gosh, it's everywhere, soil is very hard to create. You have to wait for the erosion of the bedrock, and then the bedrock has to have organic matter mixed in with it. So sometimes it takes soil hundreds to thousands of years to form. And if we farm and then we let the fields look like this, where erosion can carry away the soil, well, it's having an immense impact. The Dust Bowl, for example, in the 1930s, where you had these tremendous times where the heat was outrageous and drought was everywhere, and as a consequence, nothing grew on the land. They lost tons of really rich topsoil. So it's a crisis like that that can really impact the quality of the soils. But these kinds of things too, simple erosion and avoiding erosion like this, where you leave it without anything on it for a significant time, then you're going to erode your soils away. Obviously not a good thing. Well, there's also a problem with synthetic fertilizers. Perhaps you know that synthetic fertilizers are produced. They're not natural. Synthetic fertilizers, what they try to do is they try to concentrate things like nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium into a product. They fix it. They fix nitrogen, for example, out of the atmosphere and into the fertilizer, so that when it's put on crops, it can help the crops obviously grow and give them the things they need. The problem with fertilizers is it takes a lot of energy in the form of natural gas to produce the energy to do this fixation process. So fertilizers are great in the sense that it fixes things that we need in agriculture in order for us to do massive big ag, but it also, of course, has some side effects. One of those side effects are algal blooms, or is algal blooms. We see algal blooms more and more frequently. We've had some problems here in Florida recently this year with an algal bloom, a couple of cases. All the water agricultural fertilizers running into Lake Okeechobee caused all kinds of problems in the ocean where the water flows out into the ocean and causing algal blooms there. So it's that cause and effect again. Yeah, we can get some good things from this, but there's also potentially going to be bad effects when we do this. Algal blooms, in case you don't know it, are the result of these fertilizers flowing off the land and into lakes and oceans, causing the growth of algae in the form usually of cyanobacteria, which can be harmful to us if we swim in it. We can jump into the ocean with an algal bloom in it. It's not good for your health, obviously, and it's not good to the oceans. It kills off a lot of fish and things like that. Well, I guess there's not a whole lot that I need to say about pesticides. Whenever you create something to kill something, it's potentially harmful to a lot of other things. And we've known this ever since Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring in the early 1960s about DDT. We banned DDT, and I hope we're always on the lookout for other pesticides that might hurt us. The good news is that we're watching out and we're trying to be careful with using pesticides that are harmful to a large number of species, including us. However, I don't see any way around use of pesticides in big agriculture because we have a world population to feed. If we did not have a big world population, then we certainly could do more organic farming, maybe everything organic if we had a small enough population, but that's not the situation. And so I refuse to give up on big ag because it may cause mass starvation if we do.